Good morning, everybody. I was going to say it's Positive Tuesday, but it's not Positive Tuesday today.
No.
Romaine Quinn is my very special guest today, Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. I'm Ben Dryden, and you're watching Dryden Wire Live, presented by DrydenWire.com. Special thank you to our guests so far this month, including Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald, who actually yesterday for our Positive Tuesday show appeared remotely, I think like southern Wisconsin, somewhere at meetings. So thank you for Fitzy for doing that. Candidate for Wisconsin Governor Jonathan Wickman, and candidate for Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Ben Volkel. You can watch the recording of those and all of our live shows on our website, which is at DrydenWire.com, our Facebook page under the videos tab, or just go to our YouTube channel. That's kind of where we store all of our videos. Just go to YouTube and search Dryden Wire. Tomorrow, Thursday, October 14th, 7th Congressional District Representative Tom Tiffany will be joining me for our monthly Breakfast with Tiffany show. Every month, I think it's the second Thursday of every month, Congressman Tiffany joins me to discuss all the goings-on in D.C. and in the 7th Congressional District. But today, I'm very excited to be chatting with, I think we're just going to call it a friend of the show. You've been on many times, so you are now officially a friend of the show. Real estate mogul, former state representative for the 75th Assembly District, and as of yesterday, candidate for the 25th Senate District, Romaine Quinn. Romaine, good morning. How are you, man?
Morning. It's great to be back. Real estate mogul. I like that.
I don't know what mogul even means, but that's just what, yeah. You're a friend of the show and a mogul at this point. So how's it going? Holy cow! So you've had some big updates. So that one, obviously yesterday you sent it right before we went live.
Right.
For our
Keep you
show.
on your toes.
Yeah, I'm getting ready for the show and I get this email. I'm like, what? So I wanted to talk to you on all. Right. I'm like, oh, I can't. I got to get to this. So I want to get into that, of course. You had left, or not left, you did not seek re-election in the Assembly of 2020 to start a family. I want to talk about that, and then your decision to kind of get back into it now. So I want to go through that. But first and foremost is the, sorry, I'm having some issues there. First and foremost, how have you been? You are in real estate. When you left, did not seek re-election in 2020, you went into, I think, banking for a while and then in real estate. So your decision for leaving, because you had announced that actually during one of our live shows you were on, and you would announce that. So what was the decision there? I know we had talked about it at that point, but kind of recap people why you decided to not seek a re-election for the 75th Assembly District in 2020.
Yeah, I knew there was a big impending scandal, so I figured I better get out ahead of it. No scandal.
Nice.
Yeah, as if we've talked and on your show and other times, or at the time, my wife and I were, looking at trying to start a family, and we had talked, do I keep staying in office? Is there a time to take a break and maybe get back in later? I had an opportunity. I was approached by a local bank to come work for them. It just seemed like it kind of fit. I knew the state was still in good hands. I made Dave Armstrong commit to running before I would quit, because I think part of knowing that it's okay for me to get out because someone else will do a fine job, and I'm not the only one in this district that can do a good job, and that was proven with Dave Armstrong, who took that seat. So
yeah, he's killing it, by the way, right? I mean, first term, that guy is focused on Barron County, and I like the fact that he actually doesn't, it seems as though he doesn't really seem to care about politics that much. It's just, I want to get something done for the betterment of Barron County, or that's part of Washburn as well, and some others. But still, everyone that I talk to that is in Madison doesn't, and these aren't like Republicans or Democrats, the people that work for Republicans and Democrats, no kidding, they give him a ton of praise. Like, he's killing it.
Yeah, he knows his stuff. He already knows how the game is played in Madison. Not the game, but the process.
Yeah.
And he does a phenomenal job. He does a great job as Barron County Economic Development Director, and he's taken that, and now instead of asking me for help on what he's doing, he can do it, right? Yeah, so it's perfect. So, yeah, he does a great job, and I couldn't think of a better replacement. So kudos to Dave for hitting the ground running on that.
So you wanted to, because sometimes you see these politicians who announce, so I'm not going to seek re-election, and you kind of joking, a few minutes ago, joked that, there's a big scandal coming up. And it's no, for family reasons. It's, all right, what really is the reason? But no
Right.
kidding, it really was for you because then you guys had a family and you welcomed in a baby boy, another Romaine. How many Romaines have there been in the generations of Quinns?
There's four of us now in my family. It's funny. My mother just texted me yesterday and said, I was at the clinic and someone called Romaine, and I looked to see if it was you, and it was just some older gentleman. So obviously there is someone else in Rice Lake with a really cool name,
Yeah,
but it's
right.
not
Yeah.
not a relative. So
So I play a lot of video games and on Madden 22 because I always play the Bears, duh. And there's an
you
outside
enjoy
linebacker,
losing or what?
usually, and there's an R. Quinn because that's how they state it. When you're playing R. Quinn, and every time I see him, and I'm like, man, Romaine Quinn's even in Madden. That's crazy. Now
Yeah.
you're not actually in there.
No,
So
I'm not in
you are in real estate. How was real estate going? And then maybe this is too soon, but I do want to have a follow up already here on that. Are you still gonna do real estate while you're doing this? Can you do that? I don't know if there are laws against this. So how did real estate go, and what is your plan for real estate as it relates to your campaign? And if you win, can you keep doing it?
Yeah, so actually, my intention when I was getting out was I had an opportunity to work at a local bank.
Mhm.
So being in finance was my next step that I was going to do. Spent some time there, enjoyed that, learned a lot. Still had my real estate license at the time. And as you know, the real estate world is just kind of crazy right now.
Yeah.
It's very time consuming, very demanding. The days of let's go see a house in a couple days when you're free are over. If you don't go see it now, tonight, within 2 hours, your opportunity of window has passed. So it got very busy. And then I had to make a choice at the end of the year of do I continue to stick with the bank and give up real estate, or do I go real estate full time and give up the bank? I couldn't do both
Sure.
because there's kind of that conflict there. So at the time, it was
Right.
so busy. I apologize to the bank. It was never my intention to not go to the bank or waste their time,
Yeah.
but I enjoyed my time there. I learned a lot. It was at Sterling Bank. They are a quality lending institution. I would highly recommend them for all of your needs. I send a lot of clients there, and why people don't put their money in a local bank where your money stays in the community is beyond me. That's a topic for another day.
Hmm.
So I chose not to go there. Went into full time real estate, where I still am, and it's been an amazing success. I am blessed to have so many clients that have trusted me with their transaction, and it's kind of similar, being in office in terms of you are a part of someone's life and you are helping them make a life decision and trying to help them in any way you can to guide them to make the best possible decision. And it's probably one of the biggest decisions they'll ever make, right? Is the buying of a home or selling of a home. And
Right.
it's for various reasons, and helping them navigate through that process and making sure they're successful once you part ways is super important. So I enjoy it very much. And actually, I had my license when I was still in office in the assembly.
Mm.
I didn't spend a lot of time with it. I helped some friends here and there sell properties, but my main focus was always being your representative. And the same will take place once elected, if I'm lucky enough to be elected. I plan on keeping my license. Obviously, my first priority is the Senate. If it just becomes there's too much time involved being in the Senate, which I'm guessing there will be, then
Right.
I would just not take on as many clients or as many people who need help in a
Sure.
transaction.
Sure.
So we'll play that by ear. Obviously, it's another year and a half before the election. So still enjoying my time at Real Estate Solutions out of Rice Lake. I work with some pretty amazing agents, and we've got a great office there.
Yeah, that's kind of. I think that's relatively normal. Like teachers, they have summers off, whatever. Because some people don't like when summer's off, but because they still have to go to this or that. But a lot of them have a summer gig, a part-time thing, and that's just kind of how because they don't really get paid a ton, as we know that teachers don't. But really, real people in the assembly and the Senate, 'cause I think there's only like about a $2,000 difference from assembly to Senate, which is weird to me. Like it's basically the same pay. That's weird. Uh, but it's not a ton. It's it's nice. Thank you. I love doing what I do. But yeah, you can't like work harder or pass more bills to get bonuses or raises. So you kind of have to have a supplemental income. And I believe a lot of people have a second gig. They own a business, or from time to time, I'll go show a house. Right? If I can make like 10 grand a year by doing this twice a month, it's not that big a deal. So this is a normal thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, at least on the Republican side, our constituents want to know that we still are firmly grounded in the private sector and in life back home, right? They don't want someone who only has government experience and only is looking out for that sense. So it's been fun getting into real estate early on because we're dealing with a lot of bills that deal with housing, the issues that come with housing, real
Mm,
estate transactions. The state is the one that approves the forms that real estate agents use in their everyday practice. And so it's actually been quite fun to tie it all together, especially towards the end when we're doing bills to protect lakeshore owners to make sure they have rights to the water, you name it, lakeshore zoning, all sorts of different issues. So to be able to apply your real world experience into the job that you take with you, I think is
sure.
important. Now,
Yeah.
some people will criticize that. You're not spending enough time, or it's only about money, or this and that. But there are a lot of people, and again, it's more on the Republican side that they have their own business or they have some other career. Maybe they put it on hold, but they go back to it,
Yeah.
or something like that. So it's not uncommon at all. And a lot of legislators actually are in real estate because of the flexibility. It's very hard. For instance, when I first ran, I couldn't keep my sales job at Viking Coca-Cola. I loved that job. I loved all my customers, the managers at the C stores. I missed them, very much. I enjoyed that job, but I couldn't keep working my route knowing if I got called to Madison. So it's
Sure.
very hard to have any other type of employment, if you want to, while you're in office.
Yeah. Well, we had just discussed Dave Armstrong, the person who had succeeded you in the 75th Assembly District, and then he's the executive director for the Barron County Economic Development Corporation. And kind of tying that back into sometimes those life experiences help you down in Madison, and maybe even vice versa, because a lot of the things that he does, at least that's what I'm told, is focusing on a lot of the bills and a lot of things that he is passionate about in his job, which benefits Barron County to begin with, in southern part of Washburn County. He can now be a part of and has firsthand, experience and knowledge. So, yeah, I think that's great. And I see the flexibility part, but you had said a lot of them it seems to be more Republicans than Democrats. Why? Or why do you think?
I just think there's just it just seems to fall that way, right?
Huh.
Certain occupations people tend to lean left, and certain occupations people tend to lean right. It's not always the case, but as a general rule of thumb, there's a lot more people with an education background on the other side of the aisle when I was in office. We had Republican teachers down there too, but as a rule of thumb, more of
Yeah.
them were on the Democrat side,
Yeah.
right?
Sure. Sure. That makes sense.
We had more CPAs on the Republican side, than the Democrat side. So nothing wrong with that because it's important to have all of that, right?
Yeah.
Because as a legislator, there's no pre-qualification, right? Any Joe Schmo can get elected, right? I mean, even a 24-year-old kid with no life experience can get elected
I
to the
couldn't. I
legislature.
wouldn't be able to because on my personal page, I always talk about how my wife's place is in the kitchen. So that would come back. My
Yeah,
opponent would
even when
probably
you're
use that
joking,
against me.
I can already see the lip piece.
Yeah.
Ben Dryden. Yeah,
Thanks. Oh, wait,
yeah.
wait.
So,
Karen
but
Baker
it's
was county.
good.
Oh, I think that was your grandpa, wasn't it? Not your dad.
What's that? Oh, Karen.
I was on the
Yeah.
county
No, that
board.
was my grandpa Romaine.
Grandpa. Sure, sure.
He
Yeah.
served on the county board, and he was town chairman of Birchwood.
Yeah. And he had
That's actually his
passed.
hat I have hanging up in the background. So he
Aw.
passed away just over a year ago.
Yeah.
We shot
Yeah.
him a bunch.
Well, it was nice that we welcomed another Romaine in around that
Yes.
same time. Keep
Yep.
that tradition going. So you decide everything's going great. I left, or I didn't seek reelection again. I wanted to stay home so I could have a family. I started a family. That's exactly what I wanted to do. I
Yep.
still needed, income to provide for my family. So I'm working real estate. Now it's full time. Life is great. And now you're running for office again.
Yeah.
Okay, so when did that? How many days after that last election, when you didn't seek it and the election was over, and then a few days? How many days until you said, you know what? I don't know. I think I made a big mistake. So what led you to the decision? I'm getting back in.
Yeah. I definitely didn't make a mistake. Dave's done a great job. I enjoy my time outside of the legislature. It's kind of refreshing to be outside of it. Not gonna lie, I do miss the aspect of being in the know and being able
Right.
to help people. And I think that's where it really started to hit me, not during the election or after the election, but I'm still getting phone calls from people that are saying, I still haven't gotten my unemployment. My rent, I'm 2 months behind on my rent. and I can't get through anyone. And obviously I would pass those on to Dave, and
Right.
Dave would try to help the best he can through his office. I still field calls to this day, and I try to remind people, I'm like, you do know that I can't really call the department on your behalf anymore
Right.
because they don't care about me,
Mm.
just like they obviously don't care about you. And I'm just like you now, and I can't help. So that part was really frustrating. And I think there's just a whole accumulation of issues leading up to this that I believe Senator Bewley is just wrong on. And I don't think she reflects our values or how we would vote here in the 25th anymore. The district has changed a lot. It wasn't very long ago that Democrats held pretty much every seat from top to bottom in northern Wisconsin. And over the last 10 years, there's been a hard shift to the right. And we've seen that in our elections with Congressman Duffy replacing
Yeah.
Dave Obey at the time after 42 years. My assembly seat was held by Mary Hubler for 26 years, and previous Democrat for another 14 years. It was a 40-year swing on this seat. And then so I think it's important, and politicians usually adjust with the public, but Janet just hasn't in my mind. Her district is very purple. It's very split, and she votes like it isn't. And I just
Oh.
can't sit on the sidelines anymore. I can't sit and watch this lack of leadership, the incorrect votes, the missed opportunities we have for progress in our area. I would have killed in the assembly to have a senator that I could have co-authored a bill with that could have got something done. So I am super excited, if I'm lucky enough to get elected, to have a partner like Dave Armstrong where we can co-author a bill for Rice Lake, Wisconsin together, and we can get it done. There's just so much missed opportunity that, yeah, we can't sit on the sidelines. We can't wait. Northern Wisconsin can't wait.
So we have a question here from Pamela. I want to put that on the screen, but first, since you brought up Janet, do I get the
Yeah.
green light to ask you some questions about Janet? Because you had mentioned it in your press release, but I don't usually bring those things up. But you brought her name up, so can I
Yeah.
ask you some questions about that? Especially you had mentioned a few. I think I printed off your press release, and there was a few subtle shots there I kind of wanted to ask you about, but I didn't know if I should or not. But you brought her up, so is that okay if I bring that up in a little bit?
Yes, and
Oh.
I try not to, and obviously Senator Bewley's not here to defend herself, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of debates over the next year and a half. And I try to avoid. Obviously, it's my opinion,
Sure.
and she
Yeah,
has
it's
a
not
different
personal,
opinion.
right? It's just
Yep,
issues,
and we should
and
both be able to explain that.
yeah.
And so I try not to make it personal, but yes, I am more than happy to talk
Okay.
about the stark differences.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think Adam
Yes.
Jarko even said that. Like, don't ever make it personal. But yeah, you should absolutely on the issues in politics. It should be that way. And we did have Janet Bewley on. She's been on like 5 or 6 times. She was just on a couple 3 weeks ago, I think.
Sure.
And I love talking to Janet. I really like her a lot. Anyway, so here's the question. Hopefully you can see it up there from Pamela. What is your stand on medical freedom, mandated vaccination? How do you feel about October 18th, the Wisconsin sick day to oppose businesses' mandates on their employees? I didn't even know there was one of those coming up.
It floors me. I don't know how we got to this point where half the country is okay with the other half being fired by their employer because they won't take a vaccine they don't feel comfortable with. I think there's just a lack of respect for different opinions and the privacy and the personal decision that comes with whether or not I want to be vaccinated. So I am absolutely opposed to forced vaccinations. It's interesting. When I was in the assembly, Democrat Minority Leader in the assembly, Gordon Hintz, at the time introduced a bill to take away our personal and religious exemption for certain vaccinations. And this was pre-COVID. So it almost makes a guy think like, did they know something we didn't know?
Sure.
But not into conspiracy theories.
Right.
But anyways, we rejected it then. And I absolutely voted against that. It shouldn't be a condition of employment in my mind. My wife works for Mayo Clinic. And there are many in there that she knows that do not feel comfortable yet at this time getting the vaccine, and they are risk losing their job. So no, I do not support mandatory vaccinations. And actually, there's a perfect difference between Senator Bewley and I. There was a bill that the Republicans put forward that says employers should not be able to fire employees based on their vaccination status for COVID, and she voted against that, and it was vetoed by the governor. So there's a difference right there. If you believe that the government should force a vaccination upon you or that businesses should fire you for not doing something that you have a deeply held personal or religious belief, Senator Bealey thinks you should be fired, or that you should be forced to get that.
So
Great question.
what's the pushback? What's the pushback from the other side or the other way of thinking? I don't want to say other side because I don't want to just put this in a box of Democrats only. There may be
No,
others that independents or maybe even some Republicans for all I know that feel no, it's a private business. They should be able to state that what it is. So are we separating the private business part where hey, if it's your business, you do what you want, or is this more of a from a bill or legislation that we shouldn't put that in place? But a private business can do whatever it wants, and they can make it for their employees. Yeah, we're not going to, if you don't get vaccinated, then you can't
sure.
work here. Is there a difference between from the political side of it and from a private business owner's decision?
I think there is a big difference, but at the same time, we've always honored in this country your religious differences. For instance, at the turkey store in Barron, there is a large Somali community in this district. They work very hard. A lot of them are employed by that factory, and they bend over backwards to make sure that for if they have instances during the day where they need prayer or things like that, we work around the fact that they have certain religious needs they need to attend to even during the workplace and the workday. So if there's a difference between saying I have to wear a mask to try and mitigate the risk of the spread of something, and I have to inject my body with something, or I'll be fired. So there's a big difference there. And I think Republicans need to do a better job at saying, I think there needs to be more respect on both sides, frankly, because this whole idea that we should belittle people that choose to wear a mask or belittle people that choose to get a vaccine, I think is just wrong. There are a large amount of Republicans that choose to get vaccinated. There's nothing wrong with that. And actually, people with comorbidities, health issues that are at high risk of COVID, I mean, you should get the vaccine if you think it's going to help. And I think studies have shown it helps mitigate some of those symptoms. Now, if you don't want to get it, don't. But I think there needs to be a lot more respect for one another to make that personal decision on their own without belittling one another. You know, if you don't want to wear a mask at Menards, don't go to Lampert's.
Right.
You know, things like that. And I think on the right and the left, we have gotten, it's so easy now to wish harm on others. Oh, good. I hope they get fired if you're not going to get vaccinated.
I know.
Or on the
That's
other
just
side,
ridiculous.
it's, you know, you're going to be harmed by the vaccine, and I hope that you're sterile the rest of your life. I mean, we've seen comments like this from people, and it's just, I don't think that's who we are. And we just got to get back to a point of respecting the individual choice of people and move forward with it.
I agree.
COVID's here to stay. It's not going away.
Right. So here's a question from Dave Wilson. Do you have a plan to expand your footprint north of Highway 77? I don't know where 77 is. You are very established in our area, but folks like my mother don't know much about you. Dave, the Shellick Police Chief, I think his mom's up in Ashland area, I think, somewhere up there.
Sure. Yeah, it's a big district.
Yeah.
It's a huge district. It's
Everybody knows you in
Tennessee.
Barron and Washburn County and maybe here. But
Right.
to Dave's point, I think, yeah, I mean, how many people know you in Superior or in Ashland?
Yep, not a lot. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge with everyone that runs for the seat is that you can't be from the district, every part of the district, right?
Right.
Because you have to be from the district.
Yeah.
I apologize. But
Yeah.
you can't be from every part of the district. I'm not from Barnes. I'm not from Ashland. I'm not from Bayfield. I'm not from Superior or Price County. And the map's going to change again. We're going to see that coming out shortly, I'm sure. The legislature redraws the maps, and that's coming fast. So we have to get to every part of the district. Every part matters. I've always said that in the assembly. I don't care if you were in Clear Lake or Birchwood. We made time to get down there. We held listening sessions. We were trying to be in every parade because every community has a unique story and every community has unique needs. And if I don't go there, and if I don't meet the people, and if I don't understand those or listen,
Right.
then how am I going to be a quality legislator for you in Madison? So
Yeah.
that part's important.
So I'm trying to find this on here. Something about. So someone had told me once, because I oftentimes say on these shows when I have a guest on, oh, I didn't know that. Or help me understand, like, what does this even mean? And they said, you shouldn't do that. You're the person that's interviewing someone. It comes across like you're dumb. I'm like, well, I kind of am. So, or at least I'm ignorant. How about that? So I don't know. And there was something, here's your press release. Again, this was on DrydenWire.com. Your announcement yesterday. It was about election integrity issues. And I hear about election integrity, so I follow a lot of the links and a lot of things around Wisconsin election integrity and election integrity. So I have two parts here. First is the kind of the explaining it to me, if you could please, because what I hear, and I'm sure this is wildly wrong, but for some reason in my mind, and I can't be the only one, when I hear people saying we need to correct election or we need to have election integrity, I hear, and Donald Trump won the election and it was stolen. Like, I just tie those together for some reason, and maybe I shouldn't be. Are those kind of tied together? Is that the reason? Is if you said, hey, I'm for election integrity, does that mean that I believe that Donald Trump won the election?
No, and they shouldn't be lumped together because we got to get to a point where Democrats and Republicans both can agree that our elections should be conducted fairly and honestly, right? So I don't think you have to believe that Trump won, but it was stolen or lost to want to know that our elections are safe and fair. So, for instance,
Sure.
Republicans passed a number of bills after the election to try and mitigate some of the issues that we thought were present. And I'll be the first to admit, when the election first happened, there were a lot of allegations out there that simply weren't true that came from the right. There are a lot of allegations out there that are very concerning, like what we saw went on in Green Bay, where they took money from Mark Zuckerberg to help run their elections. They handed over the keys to the ballot box room to someone who was not a clerk. And there was a whole host of issues that it doesn't pass the smell test, right? So what I say to my Democrat friends is, why not at least look into it, or why not at least pass legislation that doesn't make it harder to vote, but at least puts people's minds at ease so we're not questioning the results of every election. It is not good for us to continue down a path where one side that loses questions the legitimacy of the elected office, whether that's a Democrat or Republican. And I think we saw some of that early on when Donald Trump first won. Oh my God, how could this lunatic have won? He's not the president, not my president, things like that. There's no way he beat Hillary Clinton, etc. So we can't have this. So if you look at the bills, for instance, that the legislature passed this year, Janet Bewley stood behind Governor Evers as he vetoed all 6 of them. So I would like an explanation from the senator as, for instance, when someone orders a ballot for my grandmother in her nursing home so she can vote, I want to be notified as her son or daughter or her caretaker that she is going to be voting and you are helping her do that, right? So if I want to go in there and talk with her about the election or make sure she knows how to do it, I have the right to do that, right? And so we should not have instances maybe where nursing home staff or assisted living staff are filling out ballots for these people without any
Okay. I
understanding
couldn't
or their
understand
own.
where you were going with that. I'm like,
Sure.
okay, I kind of get that. I mean, okay, got it. That does make
Yep.
sense. I didn't know that was
So for
a
instance,
thing that could have potentially happened or may has potentially happened already. I didn't even think about that.
right. So if you look at populations that consistently vote, those in nursing homes and assisted living centers do. And there are great staff in there, and I'm not accusing staff of
Sure.
of
Yeah, no,
doing
I get it. Yeah, right.
anything wrong. But as a family member, if like I said, my mother's 90 years old, she's still competent. Maybe she struggles with certain things, and you order a ballot for her or help her order that ballot and you help her fill it out. Why can't I be notified? That was a bill
Sure.
that was vetoed, right? Ballot harvesting. I should not be able to go to Ben Dryden's house and pick up your absentee ballot and I'll turn it in for you at the Spooner City Hall.
Give me a real life scenario like where that would, like, why would you, obviously you're not just going to come to my house and do that,
Yep.
but what's a real life scenario here?
Yeah, I mean, like we saw voting in the park, right? There was just ballot box dump places in Dane County, in Madison, where people can come and dump their ballots in a box in the park, and we're assuming that they get to the clerk and then they get to City Hall and that they're locked up and cared for like every other ballot if you were to go in and vote in person. Well, how do we know that? Your ballot should be delivered directly to City Hall and to the clerk.
Oh, sure.
And once it's in their hands, there is a clear chain of custody that has to be followed for your ballot.
That makes sense.
Right. And there are people that literally have gone door to door, or you haven't voted yet. Have you got your ballot in the mail? Fill it out. I'll bring it in for you. Things like that. No one should touch your ballot but you. No one should fill out anything on your ballot but you. And it is up to you to find a way to return that by election day.
Oh.
So ballot harvesting, we want to get rid of that. Governor Evers vetoed that. Senator Bewley voted against that. So even going back to voter ID, 90% of the public, maybe 88%, support having to show your photo ID to vote.
Yeah,
Like,
by the
that's
way,
not
I
even
don't get that one. I mean, I get that one. I mean, I don't. That's one that. Where's the pushback on that one? There has to be
right.
the pushback. I don't know what that is.
There is no legitimate argument in my mind, right? Because in order to get to the polls to vote, I have to have a driver's license to get there.
Yeah,
Unless you're
yeah.
Mandela Barnes, then you don't have
Right,
to.
right.
But there's literally no reason to not support that, right? And Janet Bewley voted against photo ID.
Yeah, I don't
So
understand. I should have
I
asked her.
think
I don't know what the pushback is on that one. There has to be a reason. I've just never really heard one or heard a legitimate one.
I think at the time originally it is pitched that this is to keep minority people from voting. And I would ask Democrats, why do you think African Americans or other minorities are so incompetent that they are unable to get a driver's license, right? I think it's insulting that you think there's an entire population
Right.
that are too dumb or unable to get a photo ID to be able to vote.
Yeah, that is weird.
I don't believe that, right? Especially we make them free. At some point in the next 4 years or 3 years, you can get one for nothing, so you can vote for or against Joe Biden again, right? So I think election integrity is important, and that's a big difference between the senator and I. She has opposed literally every single measure to make sure our elections are continued to be conducted fairly and freely.
Sure. We have a question here from Sam. Affordable housing is going to be an issue, especially for working families. Any solutions? Great question, Sam.
It's a huge problem, Sam. And I see that not only in real estate. I saw it before when I was in office. I sat on the Real Estate and Housing Committee where we went through the different programs that WIDA offered and said, okay, are these working? Are they not? Why is a developer getting the tax credit program or qualifying for it in Eau Claire, but not in Rice Lake? Or in Stevens Point, but not in Spooner, or not in Bayfield, or not in Ashland? And how can we make programs more flexible? For instance, if I don't have the economies of scale to make it make sense for a development in Shell Lake, can I do 4 units in Turtle Lake, 10 units in Barron, 16 units in Ashland, and wrap them together as a whole project to get that economy of scale, but make the tax credit programs work to incentivize businesses to go there into these communities? I remember when I was in committee the one day, the department came forward and said, look at all these great things we are doing for rural areas, and here's our one program. And they put up a building in Stevens Point. And I'm like, hold on here. Pause. Did you just say Stevens Point is a great example of a development project for a rural community? I'm like, are you any more tone deaf? And of course, they were very taken aback. And we can joke about that, but it's serious because every time it doesn't go to Ashland or to Ladysmith or to Hawkins or wherever it is in northern Wisconsin, there's real life consequences to that, whether it's homelessness, people struggling to find housing that they can afford, etc. So it's having that understanding, making programs work, making these departments listen. And actually in that meeting, we suspended their budget and they were not happy. And they went back to the drawing board and they had to come back. And I think we approved it later on. But sometimes that's what you have to do to get their attention. Yeah. And the key is having representatives that understand that and that are willing to do something about it, right? I personally believe after the last 11 years, at least her time in the Senate, I don't see Senator Bewley as being effective. We had a bill that would just help the Barron County incinerator save some money on their tipping fees.
I remember that.
Long story short, simple bill, bipartisan, DNR signs off. Democrats and Republicans on the bill. I get it passed in the Assembly. It dies in the Senate. Like, come on. This is the simplest bill we have. It only affects 2 incinerators in the state. It's not controversial, and we couldn't get it done in the Senate. So there's a lot of missed opportunity, like I mentioned early on, that we can really accomplish, I believe, once we get in office, if I'm lucky enough to serve.
So looking over your press release here, I had it printed out, the one that you had sent us yesterday, dredandwire.com, your announcement, running for the 25th. Just kind of going through some of it. You also mentioned, Janet, basically like not voting for stuff, but taking credit for it. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, and that was part of my frustration being in the Assembly is it's very easy to be a politician, right? And I always said I'm envious of the minority because you can vote no on everything, take credit for the good parts when they still get done, and then not have to take any blame if something goes wrong. You wash your hands of it, right?
Oh,
So
sure.
every single time, for instance, perfect example, the Northern Star Theater in Rice Lake sold their building. They bought the old Marshall 12 building, and they received a grant from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation to help rehab the building and bring it back to life, fix it up, and then they would have a permanent home for a great group of people that do a phenomenal job putting on these shows. Senator Bewley wanted to get rid of that entire department, like disband the whole department. She opposed it. It was created under Walker. And she's never voted for a budget in the Senate up until this last year. And so she's opposed all the funding. And then who is first in line for the ribbon cutting when the project starts? Senator Bewley, right? So it's very easy to hide behind these votes and then show up when it's easy and take credit for something that you didn't put any work into. And I just don't feel like that matches the work ethic or what people in northern Wisconsin want out of their representation. And that needs to end.
We have a question here from Ben. I was figuring that was going to be coming at some point. We'll get to that in a second. But so we've been talking about, you have been, and again, none of this has been personal. That's how politics go. If you can, I mean, you should be talking about, we assume that would be your opponent. At least I haven't seen anything. She hasn't said anything about actually running again. I assume that she is. But let's see if there's something in common ground. And I think I know what it might be. Law enforcement. Everyone can get by law enforcement or behind law enforcement. And it doesn't matter, like Fitzy, Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald is a Democrat. I don't look at him as a Democrat. And I don't think most people do. Burnett County Sheriff Tracy Finch, independent. My dad, 28 years sheriff, Republican. Other sheriffs in the area are Republican. But nobody really cares about that, to be honest. Or I don't think it really is that impactful because we look at them as law enforcement. Yep. So that has to be one thing, and I know that you know Dad very well, and Dad was actually supposed to be on the show this morning, but he couldn't make it because I know he had some questions for you, wanted to talk to you. You know Fitzy very well. You've worked with him a lot. That has to be one area, right, that you believe that you and Janet, hey, common ground here, we can both get behind law enforcement. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I would say we have been blessed in our area to have your dad for all of those years in Washburn County, to have strong leadership in Barron County. I've worked a lot with Chris on lots of issues, again, drug issues, you name it. Those kinds of things shouldn't be partisan. And actually, when I was in office, I tried to see if we could get rid of the partisan nature of the sheriff's office. And unfortunately, the association wanted nothing to do with that. Not because they want it to be political, but when these candidates run for office, they have some kind of infrastructure through a local party to help them, right? Sure. So, like you said, Barron County has swung to the right by literally 20 points in the last decade. Chris continues to win because it should be about the job, not
doing a good job.
RD behind your name. So, yes, do I think in the Northwoods, I would think a lot of Democrats even have to cringe when they see what's going on nationally, like, ooh, this rhetoric stinks. Yeah. This lumping all police together as being bad is not good. And unfortunately, as minority leader, she's got to play this part of kowtowing to the Madison think or the wokeness. Because if you look at the anniversary of Jacob Blake, the shooting of Jacob Blake, which was unfortunate, where he was shot, he's now paralyzed. There was an independent investigation done. It was reviewed by the Attorney General. And for a reminder for everyone, he went to a house. She called the cops because she was afraid he was going to kidnap her kids or take her vehicle, etc. There was a restraining order. The cops show up. He refuses to stop. They tased him. He pulled the tasers out. He supposedly had a knife. He went to the vehicle, did not stop, etc. And then he was shot and paralyzed. And so on the anniversary of that, when there was no wrongdoing by the police officer and no charges brought, Senator Bewley issues a statement saying how we need to work more towards to fix these injustices and the inequality that exists, etc. And I'm not saying there aren't issues that have to be fixed, but you're using an example where we had a criminal that was violating an order, that would not listen to the police, and that the shooting was justified. And you're using that to, again, throw our law enforcement under the bus. Like, use a different example. That's not an example because that person was in the wrong and the officer did nothing wrong. And I feel for police today, and I don't know if there's any way to quantify it, but how many officers in today's world now are going to get hurt because they hesitate more before taking an action they were trained to do because they are scared to death to be run through the ringer.
Yeah.
And my own cousin in Barron County had to pull the trigger on somebody in Barron County. I cannot imagine going through that. And it's just, unfortunately, it's the world we live in. And I believe the senator has contributed to that by her comments. Responses and comments matter.
Yeah. I was actually speaking with a sheriff in our area several months ago, and it was never reported, but there was a situation and guns were drawn, and I believe the individual was black, and I had asked about that experience. What was that, because of all the things were happening, or that had happened with George Floyd and then Jacob Blake, etc. Did you notice? And she said, yeah, no kidding. There has been. It does sometimes, you start thinking about it, and it's like, well, wait a minute now. If I did this, now, thankfully, everything was perfectly fine. They handled it exactly how they're supposed to. It went fine. There was no issues. No one was hurt. No one was anything. But, when you kind of unpack that after the fact, you kind of start, okay, did I do anything differently? And those things, nobody did anything differently, but it was, looking back, I think maybe that was either, maybe not even consciously, but subconsciously. And that's a scary thing. That's a really scary thing. So
not only just that, but I think showing your support for officers, I think, is funding them as well, right? We've seen this national movement to defund police. The legislature recently took up the effort and said, and I am partial to this because I do believe in local control. As a former mayor, I don't want the state telling me how we have to run our city. But at this time of these national movements to defund our police officers, the state passed a bill that said communities must continue to fund their police departments at their current levels. And if they cut them, we're going to cut your state revenue or your shared revenue. So the state is not going to allow you to decrease your police departments at a time where crime is spiking and there's this movement to defund them.
Sure.
So we know Mayor Barrett in Milwaukee wants to cut 120 officers from Milwaukee, the city of Milwaukee. At the same time, violence has skyrocketed, and Milwaukee is one of the deadliest cities in the country. And so the legislature passed the bill. Senator Bewley voted no, and the governor vetoed it. So I get there's the argument of local control. I think there's a time right now in our state and country that we should address this issue by doing what they did, and she was a no vote.
Yeah.
So and an issue that we should agree on. I think the record's a little lacking.
Yeah. We have a couple more questions up here. Here's one from Ben. If you support medical freedom, economic freedom, personal liberty, etc., then I'm sure you must also support cannabis legislation, right? Okay, that's a leading question, but okay.
Sure.
So, where is your stance on? Every comment. I would love to actually get into this a lot more, but we have a couple more there, and I want to ask you one more thing. We're already almost at our 45-minute mark here, so
Sure.
Where is your stance right now? I know it's been a year and a half since you've been in Madison in legislature.
Sure.
So I don't know if anything has changed there. There does seem to be, a growing population of people who are in support of, and not even necessarily medical marijuana, but the legalization of personal use of marijuana. Law enforcement still seems to be, at least all the people that we talk to, not so much. But where is your stance right now on medicinal marijuana and the personal use of marijuana? What do we need to do going forward?
I think there needs to be a greater conversation on this. When I was in office, we started taking up legislation to allow industrial hemp to come back. And there was all this rhetoric about you want people to grow weed and this and that, and they didn't even know what hemp was.
Yeah.
And there was a stigma around it. And I remember I was the only Republican to sign on to a Democrat bill to allow for the growing of hemp. Went nowhere that session, came back. Republicans introduced their own bill. Democrats had their own bill on it. I thought the Republicans were too restrictive again. And again, this was just on a hemp bill, not marijuana. And we ended up passing something, and I thought it was, again, too restrictive. We're going to go out and burn a farmer's crops if it tests just a little bit hotter than it should be. It's like you can't smoke it. It's like tree bark. Good luck smoking it.
Sure.
You're not getting high on it.
Yeah.
And so I supported that. And then we moved to like the right to try and medicinal marijuana. 100% absolutely in support of that. If you have a terminal illness or a chronic illness, and there is something that you believe improves your life so you can continue to live your best life as best you can, why is it my job to get in the way of that, right? And I don't think we should. So we passed right to try. Even if there is a drug out there that hasn't passed all of its clinical trials, if you want to try it, more power to you. Best of luck on improving your health. Medical marijuana. I think the Republican bill we had last time, again, was too restrictive. Who dispenses it? How many dispensaries are in a county? Prescription or no prescription? It made it to the point where I don't know if there would even be access because doctors wouldn't even want to prescribe it, right? And there are some doctors out there that never would, which is fine. That's your right as a provider.
Sure.
But I thought it was too restrictive. So medicinal marijuana absolutely has to get done. And my whole time in office, when it came to outright legalization, as I said, we need to be looking at these other states to see what issues there are. So I agree with Ben in the sense that I think Republicans ignore the fact that there could be some benefits. I think there are Democrats that ignore the fact that there are going to be issues that come with legalization. And I think there has to be a conversation of how do we bridge these differences. Now, I support the idea, and again, I want to work with law enforcement on this, is finding a way to get to some form of decriminalization. Maybe not legalization overnight, but the idea that the people I know in the Rice Lake community, they are professionals, they are accountants, they are police officers, they are doctors, and some of them smoke on the side recreationally. And do I think they should have to go to jail if they're ever caught with any amount of any kind of marijuana on them? No, I don't think so. Because I think we look at anyone that uses as some deadbeat dirtbag that sits in
Potheads.
and doesn't pay taxes and
Right.
ignores their kids, etc.
Right. Yeah.
And then we deal with the consequences. So I think there has to be some kind of common ground on that. For instance, if I have a plant in my backyard, I've had a friend that did this. They don't want to buy drugs from anyone or weed,
Yeah,
right?
it's still illegal, right?
Yeah, right. And so they have a plant in their backyard and they smoke occasionally, and that's a felony, right? Do I think he should have a felony? He doesn't smoke in public. What he does in his own home, I feel, is really none of my business. He goes to work every day. He pays his taxes, and he's not a menace on society. And right now, he would potentially go to prison. He'd be a felon. He wouldn't be able to rent an apartment. He wouldn't be able to own a gun. He wouldn't be able to hunt. He can't vote, etc. And I'm not totally up to speed with every punishment that comes with that, but I really think we need to have a more open conversation. And I'm willing to do that, to engage our various police associations to do that. And frankly, I would say to people who want full legalization right away, it's not going to happen overnight. And if you have any chance of wanting movement, you need to elect Republicans with open minds, not continue to send Democrats in the minority back to the legislature, because that's not how it's going to get done, just from the practical sense.
Sure.
I know it's a long-winded political answer.
No, I mean, it's good, and we could really get into a lot more of that. And again, I know Fitz has brought it up. What we could just do, I could send out an email to all the sheriffs and others that want to, maybe some area politicians, and we'll just do like this Q&A thing, and we'll run it as a story, because we can't have like everybody on at once on one of our shows, and to kind of get some of this. But the dialogue needs to start. It just can't be a yes and it can't be a no. And especially for you, maybe a little bit more challenging because it has been a year and a half, and it's okay. I kind of need to get back and figure out, okay, so where are we? Because a lot can happen in a year and a half. I want to go through a couple of things quickly. Ben, why do police Washburn County need huge military vehicles? Have you? Yeah, so I don't think Romaine can. Well, I think if they're talking about the big those Humvees, I think Dad actually got those when he was still sheriff. Because he basically got them for free. They just had to go pick them up or something. Or he had a grant or I don't remember. So it was like $3 or $4 grand for like these two. I think there was two of them. And it's for like SWAT. It's for protection of the officers and even the community. That's a question for Ask Fitzy that I think we've even talked about it on one of our Positive Tuesday shows. But I assume that's what it is. It's for the protection of not only the deputies and the officers, but also for the community that can get kids, put them in if there's a situation where they need someone to have a safe place to go, et cetera, et cetera. And then I reached out from Neil to both Senator Bewley and Rep. Milroy to discuss an issue, responded with a letter. Senator Bewley said would call. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was a question. Yeah, sorry. All right. The only thing I had written down here that I did want to ask you, because you were mentioning Chris Fitzgerald, that yes, he's technically a Democrat, but he's the sheriff down there, and it is becoming, as you had mentioned, in Barron County, more of a Republican county. Or I don't know if that's accurate or what percentage that is, but he still, has support from everyone. When you were in the 75th Assembly District, it was the same thing, but vice versa. You had a lot of support from Democrats.
Yep.
You earned that over time. People got to know you. Now, obviously, not every Democrat's going to vote for you, and I'm assuming most of them still probably won't. But you had a lot of that support. Do you see that being the same situation now that you're looking at the 25th, which is a significantly larger area? The people that don't know you in those areas that you did not before cover, now you kind of are in that. Do you see that still being a thing going forward?
If elected, yes. I mean, that was always my goal, is how do I increase my voting percentage each time? Not because I have an ego and I want to win by XYZ or so much more, but because I want to know that I am trying to do the best I can for everybody in the district. And there are going to be issues that we're never going to agree on, right? But I don't want you to think that I'm still not trying to do a good job for you on other issues that matter, like we've touched on housing, right? Other issues like that. So I think it's going to be very tough because 2/3 of the district do not know me, and I'm going to have to spend a lot of time up north. And nice comment, John. Thank you. And it's going to take time. And frankly, it's going to be a tough race because we're going to be outspent. Senator Bewley's a minority leader. She can tap into any and all funds that the Democrat arm has to reelect senators, and she can spend it any way she wants, even all on herself. So I'm guessing we're going to get outspent, but we're not going to get outworked. I'm going to do my darndest to get out there to as many communities as I can, as I'm physically able to bring our just common sense Northwood message to people. And that I think it's time for a senator that gets something done. When I was in the assembly, there was nothing more frustrating than passing bills and having them die in the Senate. Well, that's got to change. 2/3 of the bills the assembly used to pass would die in the Senate. And then unlike other representatives, I had no one to call because there was no one that could get anything done for our district on that side. So I think those days have to end. There's too many important issues in Superior and other places that really need attention and need to get done.
You seem more, this conversation I'm having with you now, because you were on our shows. Actually, you were, I think, our second guest we ever had. Like Fitzy was first, and then there was you. That's like 4 years ago. Because when we had this idea of, hey, we should do a live show. And I contacted like a dozen people in our area. You and Chris Fitzgerald were among those dozen. And you and Chris are the only ones that agreed to do it because everyone else was like, wait, so it's live? So no editing? I'm like, and we don't know the questions. I'm like, I don't even know what questions I'm going to ask until we start doing it. And they all said no, which, funny story, every single one of those people have all requested and have been on our shows after that. So just saying. But you were on, and you were actually going to be the first one, but I think you were in Madison, but you were our second guest. So you've been on many times on our shows when you were in the assembly. And you've always been a rational, logical, reasonable person, but you seem more measured than before. Again, not that you weren't before, but you seem more measured this time. More even saying, our side, Republicans, this is too restrictive. We have to start doing this. We have to. This is a side of you I didn't see before. What would you attribute that to? Or maybe you could say, I'm just wrong.
Well, Ben, I am older now, a little wiser,
and a dad.
More calm. Yep, and I'm a dad. Yes, I am 31 now. So yeah, no, I don't know. I think, and that's the hard part we run. If you try to say I want to be bipartisan, the Republicans will say, well, what convictions of ours are you going to compromise on? And the fact is none. But I think we can continue to move the ball in the right direction, even on certain issues. So, for instance, on the issue of abortion, it is a very touchy subject. It's very emotional. It's very raw for people. And I think we need to be very careful in how we approach it. I am absolutely 100% pro-life. I thought I was pro-life, and then I had a kid. I am ungodly pro-life now after going through that. Yeah. It's a miracle. But at the same time, like in the legislature, finding ways to reduce abortion. So we would, I don't believe there's a reason anytime ever, but I'm willing to try to press forward bills that maybe garner Democrat votes. So we should all be able to agree that after 5 months, if there's no risk of health or issues, that pregnancy should have to come to term. There should be no question about that. Senator Bewley didn't vote for that, right? So I'm willing to move the needle, but there's no compromise by the left on that issue. It's anytime, all the time, for any reason, and paid for by taxpayers, right? So I think for how much Republicans get the bad rap of we're just the people that say no, tell you how to live your life, etc. There's a lot more room for compromise, I think, on our side on some of these issues than there is actually on the left. And I think people can appreciate that over time. And I think we can all come together on a lot of those things.
Where can people find out more information about you and donate, I suppose? I don't know if can you take donate? I don't know how that stuff works. If you have to wait to a certain time, where do people find out more about you and possibly donate if they want to donate to your campaign?
Sure. We are officially registered now. So our campaign is legally allowed to take donations.
Nice.
Like I said, it makes me sick to think about the money that needs to get spent or that we need to raise to even be effective to get across all these mediums. Because, I mean, just think of the newspapers. If you have to take out an ad in 30 newspapers across the district,
and they're not cheap.
It's an insane amount of money. So our website will be up here today, working on a few bugs. It's just RomaineQuinn.com. And there's more information.
That's it, RomaineQuinn.com.
Keep it simple.
Oh, that's legit. How did you? I want to see if there's a BenDryden.com. No, I mean, somebody don't go to GoDaddy and buy it right now. Shoot, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, I'm going to do it.
I'm going to have it just for, I don't even know what I'll do with it. That's awesome. RomaineQuinn.com.
Give it to Jerusha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just RomaineQuinn.com. There's more information about various issues when I was in office, the various issues that we're going to address going forward about me personally. And then, of course, there's the information on how to support if you're interested in doing so.
Sure. Awesome. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about? I obviously we want you back on at some point. You're welcome anytime, as always, as well as Janet Bewley. She's always welcome on the show. So we can get into a lot more issues, a lot more topics. But is there anything that you did want to make sure that we talked about that we didn't get a chance to?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot today. There's going to be more issues going forward, and I look forward to being back on the show. And it's going to be a long year and a half. I mean, the election's not till next November. A lot of people are like, where's my yard sign? Well, we're not doing it this year. It's for next year. Sure. And we will definitely get those out when they're available. But, yeah, encouraging people to reach out anytime. Our email is quinnforwisconsin@gmail.com. So QUINN.
Is it
for
F-O-R?
the number?
Okay.
The number 4, WI@gmail.com. So email questions, concerns. Otherwise, again, you can email through the website too. And look forward to having these conversations across the district for the next year and a half. And would be humbled if I can receive your support.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Ben.
You bet. Special thank you to my guest today, candidate for the 25th Senate District, Romaine Quinn. I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching, and thank all of you for commenting and your questions. That was brilliant. I'll see you right back here tomorrow morning for this month's Breakfast with Tiffany show featuring Congressman Tom Tiffany. Until then, stay safe, stay positive, and as always, have a blessed day.